Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Ready to dive into another complicated policy issue?
Always ready to dive in.
Today, it is U.S. immigration policy.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of look back at the history.
Yeah.
And see how we even got to this point.
Totally.
Where we are in 2025.
Yeah.
We are going to be relying on three sources from the Council on Foreign Relations.
Okay.
The first one is a glossary of key terms.
Okay.
We also have an article about the economic impacts of immigration on the U.S. economy.
Right.
And then we've got a timeline of U.S. immigration policy.
Oh, cool.
Since World War II.
Nice.
So pretty comprehensive look, I think.
Yeah, a lot to cover for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating subject. And
totally.
Yeah, I think that having these three different sources to pull from is going to be really useful.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
So I was looking over the glossary of key terms, and there were already a couple of things that kind of surprised me.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
One of them was this idea of the Alien Enemies Act. Have you heard of this?
I have heard of it.
Okay, so it's a law from 1798.
Wow.
And it basically says that the president can detain or deport non-citizens who are considered enemies in wartime.
Right.
Which, like, I mean, 1798.
Like, that's a long time ago.
Yeah. Who are they even talking about at that point? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
But then, like, it gets even more complicated because the article mentions that, like, some people are saying that President Trump might actually try and use this to target people who are involved with gangs or drug cartels. I don't know.
That's fascinating, though, how something from so long ago is, like, still...
Yeah, still relevant.
Yeah, and could be used potentially today.
Yeah.
It really shows that tension between national security and individual rights.
Totally.
Which, we're going to see play out again and again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, throughout U.S. immigration history.
Another thing that I kind of always took for granted was birthright citizenship.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought it was really straightforward. You're born in the U.S., you're a citizen.
Yeah.
But the glossary points out that it's a lot more complicated than that.
Absolutely.
So what's the deal with that?
Well, you're right. The 14th Amendment does guarantee citizenship to anyone born on U.S. soil.
Okay.
But there have been legal and political challenges to that principle.
Okay.
Some argue that it wasn't intended to cover the children of undocumented immigrants.
Huh.
And there have even been calls to change the Constitution.
Wow.
To address this issue.
Okay, so that's a pretty...
Yeah, it's a big deal.
A pretty big deal.
Yeah, it really gets to the heart of what it means to be American, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so another term that I found interesting was safe third country agreements.
Right.
Can you kind of explain what those are?
Yeah, so basically these agreements allow the U.S. to send asylum seekers to another country.
Okay.
If they traveled through that country.
Okay.
On their way to the U.S.
Okay.
So if the country that they traveled through is considered safe, then the U.S. could say, well, you should have applied for asylum there.
Okay.
And we're going to send you back.
Okay.
And the Trump administration really pushed for these agreements, especially with several Latin American countries.
Okay.
But they have faced a lot of criticism and legal challenges.
Yeah, because, like, I can already see how people would say that's not really our problem.
Right, exactly. It's shifting the responsibility to other countries, many of which are, dealing with their own problems.
Yeah, and especially if that country is not actually safe.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got kind of a grip on some of the key terms, but I want to get into, like, the actual impacts.
Nitty-gritty.
Yeah, what's the impact of all this on the U.S. economy?
Yeah, and that's where our second source comes in.
Okay.
The article about the economic impacts.
Okay.
And it really, it doesn't shy away from the fact that there are very different opinions on this issue.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I was looking at some of the numbers, though, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, like what?
The article mentions that immigrants generated $1.6 trillion in economic activity in 2022.
That's a lot.
Which is more than the entire GDP of Canada.
Wow.
And then on top of that, They contributed over $579 billion in taxes.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a big contribution. Yeah, and that's a major argument for those who believe that immigrants are a net positive for the economy.
Okay.
They're joining the workforce, they're creating businesses, they're paying taxes, all of which helps the economy grow.
Right. But then the article also brings up like the opposite of that.
Right.
That immigration can actually lead to lower wages.
Right.
For lower skilled workers. So like how do we even begin to weigh these two viewpoints?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And some studies like those by economist George Borjas suggest that an influx of low-skilled labor can drive down wages. But other economists, like Giovanni Perry, argue that the overall impact on wages is minimal.
Right.
And that immigration ultimately benefits the economy as a whole.
So it's like every study has a different
conclusion.
Yeah. So like how can we make sense of all of this conflicting data?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's important to consider the methodology used in these studies, the assumptions they're based on, and even potential biases.
Yeah.
Sometimes the same data can be interpreted in different ways, depending on the researcher's perspective.
So it's not as simple as just looking at the numbers?
No.
We really need to understand the context.
Exactly.
Okay, well, the article goes on to kind of look at two very different perspectives.
For sure. From President Trump and Vice President Harris.
Okay.
In terms of their immigration policies.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have very different approaches.
Yeah.
President Trump's focus has always been on border security and deportation.
Okay.
He believes that stricter measures are necessary to protect American jobs and wages.
Okay.
He's even mentioned, reviving a massive deportation operation.
Wow.
Possibly the largest in U.S. history.
And I think, like, we have to bring up here that the Peterson Institute did a study that said that this type of mass deportation could actually shrink the U.S. economy by up to 7%.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of scary to think about the impact that would have.
Huge impact.
Yeah, on jobs and inflation and...
Yeah, consumer demand.
Yeah, all of that.
All sorts of things,
So Vice President Harris, on the other hand,
right,
is really pushing for a pathway to citizenship.
Yeah, she's always been a proponent of that.
She believes that this would boost the economy, create jobs, increase productivity.
Yeah, and there's actually research that backs that up, too.
There is, yeah.
The Center for American Progress estimated that a path to citizenship could add $1.7 trillion to the U.S. GDP over the next decade.
That's a huge potential benefit.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, I mean, it really shows how different approaches to immigration can have drastically different economic outcomes.
Absolutely.
Okay, but to really kind of understand all of this, we need to understand how we even got here.
Totally. We need the historical context.
Yes. So that's where our third source comes in, the historical timeline.
Okay, let's go way back.
Yes. This timeline is full of twists and turns.
It is, yeah.
Kind of like a political thriller.
Yeah, it really is.
But I think it really helps us understand how we got to where we are today.
It's incredible how U.S. immigration policy has been shaped by so many different factors over the years.
Yeah.
You know, the need for workers, worries about national security, humanitarian crises, even changing social values.
Yeah, it's all kind of intertwined.
It's all connected.
So I want to kind of pull out a few key events.
Okay, let's do it.
From this timeline.
Yeah.
One that really stood out to me was Operation Wetback.
Okay, yeah. Those
under President Eisenhower.
A big one, for sure.
What exactly happened there?
Well, so in the 1950s, there was a huge increase in undocumented immigration from Mexico.
Okay.
Which led to concerns about jobs and border security.
Okay.
Operation Wetback was a mass deportation program aimed at removing undocumented Mexican immigrants from the Southwest.
Okay.
It was highly controversial.
Yeah.
Criticized for its aggressive tactics and the impact it had on Mexican-American communities.
And also it just kind of makes you think about like how economic factors really drive migration patterns.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, people are looking for a better life.
Yeah.
They're looking for opportunity.
Yeah.
And they're going to go where they think they can find it.
Right. So it's like we can try and like put up all these walls and borders.
Yeah.
But if people are desperate enough, they're going to find a way.
They're going to find a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then just a few years later, we see a complete shift in policy.
It's pretty amazing.
With the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act.
Yeah, this was a landmark piece of legislation.
Okay.
It moved away from these national origin quotas.
Okay.
And instead, it prioritized family reunification and skilled labor. which had a huge impact on the demographics of the U.S.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, significantly increasing immigration from Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean.
So it's amazing how one policy can have like a lasting impact.
It can change the face of a nation.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Okay, so fast forwarding to the 1990s.
Okay.
We encounter Operation Gatekeepers.
Right.
What was the goal of this one?
Well, Operation Gatekeepers was implemented under President Clinton.
Oh.
And it was a response to growing worries about illegal immigration.
Okay.
Across the U.S.-Mexico border.
Okay.
Especially in California.
Okay.
The goal was to deter illegal crossings by increasing Border Patrol agents, building fences, and using new technology.
Okay.
But, really trying to make it more difficult to cross the border illegally.
But didn't that just end up pushing
that's
migrants to more dangerous routes?
Yeah. That's one of the arguments against it, is that it didn't actually stop people from crossing.
Right.
It just made them go to more dangerous areas.
Yeah.
Where they were more likely to die.
Yeah. That's kind of tragic.
It is a tragic consequence for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then of course we have the Cuban refugee crisis.
Right. Which has its own unique history and policy implications.
Yeah. Could you kind of shed some light on how all of that?
Yeah, so the U.S. has always had a complex relationship with Cuba, and that's reflected in its immigration policy.
Okay.
The 1966 Cuban Adjustment Act made it much easier for Cuban refugees to become legal residents in the U.S.
Okay.
But then this policy kind of changed over time.
Okay.
Leading to the wet foot, dry foot policy in the 1990s.
Okay.
Which basically said that if a Cuban refugee made it to U.S. soil, they could stay.
Oh.
But if they were caught at sea, they were sent back.
So it was literally like, if your foot is wet.
If your foot is wet, you're out of luck.
You're going back.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty controversial policy.
It does seem kind of arbitrary.
It was definitely influenced by global politics and the Cold War and, all sorts of factors.
Right. And it just shows how these policies can drastically change.
They can change on a dime.
Yeah.
Depending on who's in power.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And what the political climate is like.
Right. So much history. And so many different perspectives.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. It really is.
For sure.
But I think we need to kind of take a step back now and why...
Why does this matter?
Yeah, why does this matter to our listeners?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's an important one.
Yeah.
Because U.S. immigration policy doesn't just impact immigrants.
Right.
It impacts all of us.
Right. It affects
our jobs.
Yeah. Our economy.
And our communities.
Our
values.
Even our values.
Yeah. It's really far-reaching.
And I think it's really easy to feel disconnected from this issue.
Yeah.
Especially if you,
Especially if you don't know anyone?
I don't know anyone personally.
Yeah, who's directly affected by it.
Yeah, who's affected by it.
Yeah. But it's all around us.
Yeah.
I mean, immigrants are our neighbors.
Yeah. Our coworkers.
Our friends.
Sometimes even our families.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about, their economic contributions.
Absolutely.
We talked earlier about how immigrants generated $1.6 trillion.
Yeah, it's not a small number.
In economic activity.
It's huge.
And paid billions in taxes.
Right. I mean, they're filling crucial roles in our workforce, starting businesses, creating jobs.
Yeah, they're not just taking from the system.
No, they're contributing to it.
Yeah, they're contributing to it.
In really significant ways.
Yeah, and I think...
And adding to our culture.
Yeah, and adding to...
our diversity.
Yeah.
And driving innovation and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, for sure. But we also have to acknowledge that there are some concerns about immigration.
Right.
Especially when it comes to
border security.
Border security.
The strain on social services.
Yeah, and those concerns are valid.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we need to address those.
Yeah. But I think it's important to approach these issues with a balanced perspective.
Totally.
Understanding the complexities and avoiding generalizations.
Right. And it's we can't ignore that there are people who take advantage of the system or commit crime.
And that there are bad actors.
Yeah. Or might even pose a security threat.
Yeah.
But it's we can't just paint all immigrants with the same brush.
We can't stereotype.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about finding solutions that address these legitimate concerns without resorting to policies that are discriminatory or inhumane.
Yeah.
We have to remember that behind the statistics and the political rhetoric,
we're
talking about real people with families and dreams and hopes for the future.
Yeah, and this kind of brings up a question for me. Like,
okay,
how can we as individuals navigate this issue and make sense of all this conflicting information?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think it starts with staying informed.
Okay.
Being critical of the information you encounter.
Okay.
And engaging in respectful dialogue.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds like good advice to me.
Okay, good.
And thankfully, like, we have organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations.
Like, they're a great resource.
That offer these resources.
Yeah, for understanding these nuances.
Yeah, they have all these in-depth articles and timelines and
expert analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really valuable information.
Yeah.
That can help us see through the political spin.
Totally. And so it's like we need to consider multiple viewpoints.
Absolutely.
Understand the historical context and be willing to challenge our own assumptions.
Yes. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Right. Like, have conversations with people who hold different views.
Exactly.
Like, listen to their experiences.
Yeah, listen to understand.
Yeah, and try and understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, because open dialogue is how we can start to bridge divides and find common ground.
Totally.
And remember, this is ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
These policies are always changing. New challenges are emerging. The debate continues.
So it's like we have to stay engaged.
We have to stay engaged.
Stay informed.
And compassionate.
Yeah.
I think that's key.
Okay, so we've explored the key terms.
Yeah. We've gone deep.
The economic impacts.
The historical shifts.
Historical shifts.
Even the personal implications of immigration policy.
Well, maybe take some time to kind of bring it all together.
Yeah, let's connect the dots.
Yeah, and see what we can learn from this deep dive.
Okay, so I think one of the main takeaways here is that U.S. immigration policy is constantly changing.
Yeah, it's definitely not static.
It's shaped by this complex mix of economic needs, social pressures, political maneuvering, humanitarian concerns.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
It's a lot.
A simple issue with easy answers.
It's not.
Yeah.
And any policy decision is going to have trade-offs.
Right.
You're going to have winners and losers.
Yeah.
No matter what you do.
Okay, second
takeaway.
Immigration has had a profound impact on the U.S.
It has.
Shaping its demographic.
Its
economy.
Its culture.
Yeah. It's rude.
Immigrants have made incredible contributions to the nation's growth and vibrancy.
They've really enriched our communities
Yeah.
and driven innovation.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, third. The immigration debate is often charged with emotion.
Oh, yeah.
Misinformation and political posturing.
Yeah.
So it's really important to approach this issue with nuance, critical thinking, and empathy.
We need to move beyond, like...
Yeah, the sound bites.
Yeah, the sound bites and the stereotypes.
And engage in constructive dialogue based on facts and shared values.
Okay. And I think, like, finally,
Finally.
it's important to remember that U.S. immigration policy isn't just like an abstract political debate.
No, it's not a game.
It has real consequences.
Real consequences.
Billions of people.
Absolutely. It affects families, communities, the very fabric of American society.
So I think as we're kind of wrapping up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a question to consider.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah, I love a good cliffhanger.
Okay, so here's the question.
Hit us with it.
Given the long history of immigration policy debates in the U.S., what lessons can we learn from the past to inform future policy decisions?
That's a great question.
What do you think?
I mean, it really challenges us to think about the long-term consequences.
Yeah, of our choices.
Yeah.
And to think about, what policies will truly serve the best interests of the nation.
Right.
Uphold American values and create a more just and equitable society for everyone.
And that's what the deep dive is all about.
It is.
Giving you the knowledge and the insights you need to navigate these complex issues and to form your own conclusions.
We encourage you to continue exploring this topic.
Yeah.
Seek out diverse perspectives and engage in thoughtful discussions.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the future of U.S. immigration policy
in our hands.
Yeah, is going to be shaped by the choices that we make.
The choices we make together.
Yeah. Yeah, that question really has me thinking about, the choices that we face as a nation. I mean, looking back at the timeline, it's so clear that U.S. immigration policy has always been about, like, finding this delicate balance.
Yes, it's about balancing economic needs with concerns about national security and balancing our humanitarian instincts with political realities.
Right. And it feels like those tensions are more strained than ever now.
I think so.
Especially with President Trump back in office and him taking such a hard line on immigration.
Yeah, he's not messing around.
It feels like we're at a crossroads.
Yeah, it's a pivotal moment for sure. His executive orders are really shaking things up.
Yeah, and like specifically the one declaring a national emergency at the border.
Right.
I mean, that's a
big deal.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that represents a significant shift in policy.
Yeah, and deploying the military to the border just feels...
It does feel...
drastic.
Yeah, pretty drastic.
Yeah.
For sure.
And what about his attempt to end birthright citizenship?
Right.
Is that even possible?
Well, that's something that legal experts are debating fiercely right now.
Yeah.
As we discussed earlier, birthright citizenship is protected by the 14th Amendment.
Right.
So changing it would require a constitutional amendment.
Right.
Which is a very long and complicated process.
So it's probably going to end up in the courts.
Oh, yeah. This is definitely headed for the courts.
Yeah. And just leading to more uncertainty.
Yeah. More legal battles.
Yeah.
More uncertainty for sure.
What about the people who are already trying to immigrate legally?
Yeah.
Or those hoping to come to the U.S. in the future?
I mean, it's a really anxious time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The suspension of the refugee admissions program.
Yeah.
The stricter asylum rules. The crackdown on people overstaying their visas.
Right.
I mean, all of these things create a climate of fear and uncertainty for immigrants and their families.
And it's just heartbreaking to think about.
It is.
Like the human cost of all of these policy changes.
Yeah. The families being separated, the dreams being crushed.
Yeah.
The lives being uprooted.
It feels like we're losing sight of the human side of this issue.
I think that's a real danger that we have to be careful of.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the political rhetoric and these abstract debates.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that this is about real people.
Yeah, with real lives.
Real people with real lives.
Yeah, and they just want a better life for themselves and their kids.
And a better future.
Yeah, or
they're escaping violence.
Escaping violence. Persecution.
And they're coming here and
contributing
to our communities.
Yeah.
And our economy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Their stories deserve to be heard.
Their contributions recognized.
Yeah.
And their rights respected.
So, what can we do?
What can we do?
Yeah, what can we do as individuals to, make a difference when things feel so overwhelming?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, we can stay informed.
Okay.
Don't just rely on sound bites and headlines.
Right.
Do your own research.
Yeah.
Seek out different perspectives.
Okay.
And, have thoughtful conversations with people who hold different views.
And thankfully, we have those resources available to us.
We do.
Like the articles and timelines from the Council on Foreign Relations.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then also, don't hesitate to contact your elected officials.
Yes.
And let them know where you stand on these issues.
Absolutely.
Advocate for policies that align with your values.
Yeah.
And hold those in power accountable.
Hold them accountable.
Yeah, because it's easy to feel powerless.
Yeah.
When you're faced with these,
right.
big challenges.
Just huge systemic issues.
Yeah. But, our voices do matter.
They do.
Yeah. And there's so many organizations doing incredible work to support immigrants and fight for their rights.
Absolutely.
So, volunteering your time or donating to these organizations.
Yeah, even just raising awareness can make a difference.
Yeah, it's really about, remembering that we're all connected.
We are all connected.
And we all have a role to play.
We do.
In shaping the world that we want to live in.
Absolutely.
And as we've learned from our deep dive today, U.S. immigration policy isn't just about laws and regulations.
It's about who we are.
It's a reflection of who we are as a nation.
As a people.
Yeah, it reflects our values, who we aspire to be.
How we treat each other.
And how we choose to treat those who come to our country hoping for a better life.
Absolutely.
So we encourage you to think carefully about the information that we've discussed, to have those meaningful conversations.
Yeah. Keep the conversation going.
And to act with compassion and understanding.
Compassion and understanding.
Yeah.
Those are key.
Because the future of U.S. immigration policy isn't just something for politicians to decide.
It's up to all of us.
It's a responsibility that we all share.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights.
Yeah.
And a renewed sense of purpose.
Yeah.
In navigating this complex and constantly evolving issue.
And until next time,
yeah,
fellow deep divers, stay Stay curious.
Engaged.
Stay engaged.
And stay informed.
And stay informed.